All right, to start the training, we do have a data import feature for this functionality or this section of Streamline. Working with our support team yesterday, they sent me the Excel spreadsheet for data import, and it's pretty standard. It goes down to address, lat, longitude, and that kind of thing. So pretty basic information that we would need from either the fire department or the water department or whoever's in charge of your hydrants at this point to pull that information in. Because as Justin said, we can manually add the hydrants, but just walking around your neighborhood, you can see how big of a task that would be to manually input the hydrants in your neighborhood alone, let alone for your entire jurisdiction. So the data import feature is something that would definitely would recommend taking advantage of for hydrants if you can get your hands on that information from, again, either yourselves in a previous RMS system or the waterworks department. Or city planning, something like that. And again, XLS or CSV file type for that. And we do have a standard form to make that work. So as Justin said, hydrants should be on for everybody. But if you don't see it, it may be hidden under these three little buttons, three little dots for more in your menu bar. It may be hanging out just above templates if you're an admin, but it may be just tucked away a little bit, but it should be on. And so we're going to be working in the Hydrants tab today. The benefit of Streamline is that it was really kind of forward-looking in the fact that if you know and understand how to use the properties grid or the inspections grid, the hydrant section should look and feel and work very, very similarly. So we're on our global search right now. And as you can see, the fields are what really kind of change for hydrants because they're going to be treated and act a little bit different than properties. And so when I was on the job, our deputy chiefs, our duty officers, would get the call from the waterworks department or from companies as they were driving around and find a hydrant out of service, and they would literally write it on the whiteboard in their office. But if they forgot to communicate that out during morning meeting or something like that, there was no way for the rest of the department to know that those hydrants were out of service. And so I really like in Streamline's format, if you can actually log in and you can see red, bold, which ones are out of service right away. So no matter who has access to this, they can edit those hydrants, take them in and out of service, and then it turns red for everybody else. So you have a quick glance and see which hydrants in your jurisdictions are out of service. And so we could even do some sorts. So if I was working today at Station 19, I'd be able to sort my station column here, just pull up the ones in Station 19 and see, okay, I've got no hydrants out of service in my jurisdiction. That's cool. Clear that column back out to look at the full data set again. So you can see very quickly, just like in the properties and complexes and inspections tabs, that you can search and sort through the different columns here. To take a hydrant out of service, it would be a matter of clicking into the hydrant itself, into the details section, and then there's one checkbox at the top of the screen for hydrant is out of service. So if I were to take that hydrant out of service, I can update that hydrant. And if I go back then, you can see that turned red. And I go back to that main search grid, I now have 3 hydrants out of service. And so to manipulate it, it's as easy as that. You can take hydrants in and out of service on the tablet in the field if you're doing the inspections and you find that it's a bad hydrant while you're doing a flow test or an inspection or it needs service. And so then when you sync, it's going to go back into your main system and turn that red again. And just like in the rest of the system, we've got the global search bar, so you can search across all different property fields. I had one customer comment, we don't have a good naming structure for a hydrants. In our system, the hydrant ID is fully customizable, so you can see all the different ranges that we've got built into the system just to show that you can make that hydrant ID really anything that you want. It's kind of how you would label it for yourself. So maybe you'd put a station number to start with it, or if you cover multiple jurisdictions, you could put like WDM for West Des Moines at the front and then just a sequential numbering system. So the hydrant ID really is up to you. It's just a way for you to track it and tie everything back together within the system. But we can then search, or we can see that we want to check for just private hydrants. So if I have private in my search grid, I want to make sure that I only check the ones that are private. Now I could quickly have a report of all of the private hydrants that we have in our jurisdiction, and then one-click export to Excel here using the button in this blue bar. If I wanted to see how many private 5-inch outlets we have, 5-inch steamers we've got that are private, you can see that you can search through multiple of those grids at the same time or columns at the same time. And then to clear everything off down at the bottom is a matter of just clicking clear. So again, like the rest of the system, very easy to dig deep down into your data because hydrants, there's going to be many, many more of those than we have buildings. And so we'd expect this data set to be even larger yet. And just like, again, in the rest of the system, it is, we do use that and respect that roaming profile. So if this is how you want your grid to be set up, awesome. If you don't want, say, hydrant make, right? You don't really care about that. You can right click on that, hide that column out because quite honestly, at the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter. But if there's another data set that we want, we can go to that column chooser. And just like in the rest of the system, we can pull something over. So maybe we want to know yard hydrants that are in the middle of those apartment complexes, something like that. So I can pull that column over instead, and you can see that those boxes then are checked for yard hydrants. So again, once you're familiar with one area within Streamline, it really does translate back and forth to the other sections. So I'm going to click into West Des Moines Station 19's Hydrant 1 into the Details tab, just so we can kind of look and see what we've got going on in here. Again, the setup is going to be very similar to what we've got going on in the Properties Details section. We start with the Hydrant ID, but as you can see, that's fully customizable and editable, so you can put any combination of alphanumeric characters in there. The street address below it. But with hydrants, we also know that a lot of hydrants are not necessarily easily numbered on streets. So we also give you the option of putting cross streets in for those hydrants. So for this one, I put the address in as 8201 Coachlight, but it's really kind of on that corner of Coachlight and South 82nd Street. So I wanted to make sure that we had that information in there. I also obviously have lat and longitudes because as you go through development or for those, again, those yard hydrants, although you need a street name, we really can work off lat and longitude because for West Des Moines, for example, development was so fierce for a while, we had hydrants literally stuck in the middle of cornfields as they were starting to put infrastructure in, but yet the farmers still were using the land for farm fields. So lat and longitude became important. You can also write a little bit deeper description about the location of the hydrant. So you can say like on the back quarter, back southeast corner of the lot or something like that. The check boxes for private yard and dry here, as you can see those translated to that search grid. And then we also have what district it's in and station territories that it may be in as well. And then the bottom section should be things that you should recognize, hydrant make. These are all lookup field driven. So if you see those kind of blue drop down carrots, these are lookup table driven. So you get to add as much or as detailed information as you want. So I'll be honest, I've never really tried to track my hydrant models before, but some people do. The waterworks department took care of hydrants for my jurisdiction. So I had to do a little research and find out what some classic models were going on. Hydrant year, so we can track when they're either installed or manufactured, whichever you want to do. So we'll put that as 2010. Outlet types, if you've got quarter turn Storts connections or something like that, or standard 5-inch NSTs, this should actually be NST, not 5-inch, because our outlet size is over here. So when I built up my lookup tables yesterday, mistakenly put in 5-inch. So let's make this that quarter turn Storts connection instead. For water main type, you can track all that kind of information if you want. So maybe this is a dead end hydrant. We know that this is going to be on a main. We can track barrel sizes, barrel lengths, where your shutoff location is. So again, these fields are really, really particular or specific to hydrants as you'd expect. But these are all going to be adjustable and editable in the field as well. Hydrant classification. I like this one because the system, if you do a flow test, it is going to calculate GPM. So I built that standard classification from the red, orange, green, blue, the NFPA flow in here. So maybe we know that this one's going to be a good hydrant. We've got a good hydrant, so put it up at 1500 plus on that. So we could update that record and all of that information will then be saved. We also have contacts. So where contacts are required field for properties and inspections, they're not required for hydrants because there's just not necessarily a contact registered for every single hydrant. It might be the fire department owns them, the waterworks department owns them, but we also give you contacts because maybe it is a private hydrant in an apartment complex. And so you want that maintenance person to be your point of contact. So we do allow you to track contacts for hydrants, but again, not necessarily required in the fact like it is for properties and inspections. And then a general notes section, just so you can take notes about the hydrant, what you find, that kind of thing, or maybe it's a hard turn or something like that. Just you can write notes on here. Again, these are going to be internal facing notes for the department at this point. And then we'll drop down into inspections. So you can see as I was building this out a little bit, I did an inspection yesterday on this hydrant, and so it was scheduled and completed. Yesterday, all we did was we flushed it as that is marked true, and we inspected it as that column is marked true. And as you can see from that main property or that main search grid, I also have search grid here. So I can search through my list of inspections as we go and search for ones that are just true in a flushed area. So I can just pull up and see the last time that this hydrant was flushed rather than sorting through all of that information. I can check it out there. And you can see also that I already have a inspection scheduled for today on 4/21. And just like for properties, I have the ability to just add a one-off inspection. If I know I'm going to go check this hydrant today, I can add that just by clicking add. And it's a standard workflow worksheet from that properties tab. So we can choose the year we're going to inspect it, the date that it's going to be inspected, who it's going to be assigned to, what template we're going to do. So you can build different templates just as in properties. So maybe you just have a template for just a general inspection. And then you have another template for if you're doing a service or a flow test, right? So you can have multiple different templates within the hydrants module as well, just like in that inspections module. And then since type is lookup table, you can have different inspection types. And then notes for the inspector. So just like in properties, once we're scheduling the inspection, those notes are inspector facing at that point. So this is how we schedule one off. So I'll go ahead and cancel that and we'll go back to that main search grid. And just like in the property section, if I wanted to schedule a whole, say I want station 19 to go and schedule or do some inspections on all of their hydrants this quarter or this month, I can just search or sort by station. I could highlight the first one, highlight the bottom one, use the right click button and click on schedule, and I'd then be able to bulk schedule those. And that's a manual process at this point. Then just like properties, we have the ability to drop hydrants into groups and then do auto scheduling via groups, just like in the properties tab. And so once you'll figure that part out, you can apply that to hydrants so that you can put your hydrants on that annual rotation of getting flow tested every year as well. I also have the right click and the ability to bulk edit hydrants as I do in the property section. So if I were to right click, it'll give me a selector box for what I want to update for these. So very quickly, based on address, I could drop them into stations, districts, or I could change those hydrant classifications if I knew for those. So I'll go ahead and close out on that. I'll move over to the inspections and testing tab. You can see that if I go to all inspections, this is going to bring up inspections that have been completed and inspected. So right now I've got 2 years selected, so it's given it a little bit of trouble. So if I just choose 2020, you can see that it'll show me all of the inspections that I've got either completed or scheduled coming up, all in the same column. And again, you can see quickly that just by looking at the check boxes here in this grid, I can search and sort for, say, I'll just want to see the ones that have been flushed. And so I can, again, use that checkbox search, and it's only going to show me hydrants that have been flushed per their inspection sheet. And then obviously on the right, next section over is going to be our scheduling by groups, which is a little bit deeper of a tactic to use, so we'll go ahead and forgo that today. So I've got my inspections already queued up and scheduled, so I'm going to move over to the tablet version. You can see here that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these scheduled here for 4/21. So let's go see what it looks like on the mobile. So as I click over to the mobile, I'm showing this on the Windows version. It's going to look and feel and work the same on the iPad version. But just like the inspections tab, if we were to do commercial occupancy inspections, as you recall, we would just click on that little house, that building feature down in the bottom left-hand corner. But since we're working in hydrants today, we're actually working on that next button down that looks like a fire hydrant. Pretty obvious there. So just like in the properties tab, I have my inspections tray here, and it works in the same way. And the fact that I've got a calendar, so I can look at date ranges. I have my to-do list, as I like to call it, here in the middle, so I can sort those by scheduled date, by status, and by address. And you can see that my hydrants are blue for the ones that I've got left to do, and then I've got a green one because my crew's already got one inspection done for the today in the field. So as I zoom in with hydrants, this is the road view. Does do us a little bit of good in the fact that it gives us the street names. But I really like the aerial view for hydrants personally, and this is the reason why down here in the bottom right-hand corner. So this is actually Station 19 in West Des Moines. There's a lot of buildings around it now, so the aerial image is a little bit old, but you can see that there was a hydrant on the street, and then there's also a yard hydrant back in the lot. And so both of those are tagged with the same address, but one's going to be marked for the address, and then one's going to be marked in the yard. And so if I put it back onto the road view, this one looks like it's just, that one in the top right looks like it's just hanging out there in the middle of nowhere. But with the aerial view, it becomes very obvious very quickly that that's actually probably associated with that building and associated with that property. So I really like this, especially when we go to update locations, because as we update the locations, that lat longitude becomes very, very important because we can drop those pins then directly on top of the hydrants. So let's go ahead and click into one of these and see what we've got going on. When I click on that hydrant, it shows me the hydrant ID. It gives me the row street name that it should be sitting on, as well as when it's scheduled. So if I click into view inspection, this should look and feel very similar to your property inspections, again, by design, so that if you're trained in one aspect or trained in one area, Streamline is very easy to use back and forth. So to begin the hydrant inspection or to begin the flow testing, click on begin inspection down in the bottom right-hand corner, and all of my fields now become editable again. So you can see, just like in the properties inspections, the red asterisks are the ones that are required fields. So the inspector is me. The street that it's sitting on is Mills Civic. That's accurate. West Des Moines is accurate. I'll punch in the state here. Zip code. Update location. So again, just like in the properties tab section, we can zoom in and switch it to aerial, zoom in and make sure that we're dropping that pin truly on where that hydrant is sitting. So if it's on that corner, I want to update it to sit on that corner and call it done to save that lat and longitude. I can also change my cross street sections. I can click if I know what the classification is going to be, change it from a private yard or dry hydrant, and then those same fields down here as we saw in that administrative section. I have the ability to add contacts in the field, just like in properties. So if this is a private hydrant, maybe you'd have that property owner in as a contact, or if it's a waterworks owned department instead of a city owned department hydrant, you could switch it and make the waterworks department a contractor. So you could add contractors in. So we'll use Justin's House of Sales here. I'm sure he's done a good job of taking care of that hydrant for us. History, so any past inspections done on this hydrant will show up in the history section. And then we get to our hydrant test. So just like in properties, these templates are fully customizable, and you can have multiple different ones in the system. So you can choose whether it's going to be a flow test type checklist or template, or just an inspection type template. But very first at the top, we could take the hydrant out of service. If we get there and it's just very obvious as this hydrant is broken, we can tag it out of service. We can take a couple pictures of it and add it. We can add notes. We could just take some other pictures, as we've got a photo gallery there. The functionality is just the same as in the property section. I've got flow testing, flushed, hydrant being inspected, service, painted. So you remember, those are all those check marks back on the administrative side. So today we're going to inspect it, and today is also going to be a flow test. So if I keep scrolling down, we have a flow test, or a flow calculator built into it as well. So we have it set up so that you can do single hydrant flow testing or multiple hydrant flow testing. So is this an area of flow using multiple hydrants? In this case, it's not going to be, but if it were, I could switch it to yes. And we could say that we're going to do this flow test using 2 hydrants, which is a fairly standard type flow test. But we'll do a single hydrant for ease of purpose, and we'll throw all of our gauges onto this hydrant. So before we open it up, we're going to have ourselves about 50 pounds of pressure at the hydrant. When we start to flow it out, we'll drop down to about 45 pounds residual, and our reading on our pitot will be, say, a 10. So we don't have a secondary hydrant because we aren't doing an area flow test, and so we'll just leave it at 0. And it's as easy as that. And we don't really have any of these tagged as violations per se. So you'll see that even as I'm going through this checklist and marking things, down here in the bottom left, violations aren't being added. But if for some reason, for example, the jurisdiction I worked in during our building inspections, hydrants had to be painted a certain color. So if we inspected those hydrants specifically and they weren't painted a certain color, they could actually write that up as a violation per my city code. So a question could be, is this hydrant painted the correct color? If that answer was no, we could actually tie that back to a city muni code and then have a violation associated with that. So just like in properties, if I were to complete this inspection, it's going to validate the record. And if the record isn't validated correctly or something is missing from my required fields, it's going to notify me. And so it says, hey, you need an inspector signature. So if I click on OK, you can see I've got inspector signature at the bottom. Sign that real quick. Just make it a little bit more official that somebody's actually doing this inspection, and then complete the inspection. As always, there's a save and stop editing button. So if the crews are out doing these tests and they get a call, they can save, stop editing, and come back and complete it at a later time. But we'll go ahead and complete the inspection. Again, 2-step validation to complete. So one in the bottom corner, and then a secondary completion button right in the center, so you don't accidentally hit that complete button right on the edge of the screen. Touch the one in the middle, and it'll then mark that hydrant complete. And just like inspections, my pin on the map has now turned green that one's completed, and I'd move on to the next one. And over in my to-do list, that is also green. So you can see that I've got a notification by my sync button. So if I hit sync, I actually built this a little bit differently on my tablet for this purpose. So when it syncs this, I've got it set up now that those completed inspections are going to drop off immediately because I don't necessarily care which hydrants I've already done. I just want to know how many I've got left to do today, get to work, and keep going. So I actually set it up so that as soon as I sync, they drop off of the tablet. So I just set that up just to test it out and kind of like that functionality rather than having one day even on there showing what I did yesterday. This way it can roll off today. And that's a setting on the administrative side as far as how that works. So if we go back to our main area now and go to our completed hydrants, we'll be able to see in here, and we'll sort this by date so we can see the one that we just completed, 421. So we just completed hydrant number 5, and we flow tested it and inspected it. We did tag it as out of service at the beginning of that, but we did do that flow test, and you can see right here in the middle, I've got an actual GPM. So based on the information that I read during that flow test and typed into the tablet, on the administrative side, it goes through the calculations and provides me the flow or the GPMs of that hydrant. And so then I could update that classification then to be a class AA or light blue because we're getting over 1,500 gallons per minute out of that hydrant on that west side of town. And so that's really kind of the power of doing the flow test on the tablet, is that all of those calculations that you used to have to do by hand that I was studying or refreshing on before this training happens automatically by the software. And then you could sort. So you could really sort by the GPMs, right, in this section. So you could see what areas of town are having water flow issues. So you would be able to see if there's an area that we could target to work with the water department somehow. Maybe we can put bigger mains. I know that's not going to happen, but we have actual flows then from our hydrants right here. And as always then could export this out. And so without stepping out on a branch too far, I know that when my department went through accreditation, a lot of that accreditation was on water systems and what our water flows calculations actually were. And so we'd have this kind of information from actual GPMs, and we can have all of our hydrants and export that out, and that data would be provided by the department rather than, say, the waterworks department. And if I go back to my main search grid, since we take that hydrant out of service, it's down here at the bottom now in red as out of service. And any information that I updated in the field, as you would be expected to believe, would be updated on the administrative side as far as the fields that we changed or edited in here. My lat longitude was updated. And if I go to the inspection side, we can now see that I have a completed inspection on 421 today, and that the actual GPM was calculated using a flow test, and that hydrant had then also be inspected with that flow test. So hydrants really are not any more complicated than properties. In fact, the biggest thing to tackle from a hydrant perspective, quite frankly, is the quantity and volume of hydrants in your system. And so again, going back to the very beginning, that's where that data import functionality that we can do for you is really critical to at least get started and have this information in here. And then you can take the same software, the same tablets you already have in the field, and start to have those crews or have other folks go out and do the inspections and tests in the field.
Now, Eric, one other thing that you may want to touch base on really quick is to go in and look at the template for hydrants.
Certainly. So for those administrative users out there, you should be familiar with our walk-in form templates. And so to get to hydrants, it's just a matter of hovering over the template here in the top left. We've got walk-in community risk reductions templates, and then hydrants. So if I click onto the hydrant section, you can see I've just got one template built in right now. It was that main hydrant inspection that we were working with, but you can see that I have the ability, just like in properties, to set re-inspection schedules. So if you want to inspect it, or if it's that private hydrant, you can set a re-inspection that you're going to be back out there in 14 days. Same thing, you can make it active, you can require signatures or add additional violations. But if we go to our actual checklist then for the template, this is where we're going to manage those fields and manage those tests or the questions that we have on the tablet. And so again, the functionality is just the same as it is for property templates, and the fact that I can build my group areas over here on the right. As you saw on the tablet, we had two different sections. We had just general information, and then we had test information. So if I expand those, I've got that toggle for taking a hydrant out of service, the check boxes for flow testing, flushing, and inspections. So you can see that this is same kind of customization as it is on the properties templates and checklists that we use. And so you can really make this specific to the different types of readings or your specific tests. So if you don't do single hydrant tests, you could only have questions about you don't have to use the question about the multiple hydrants in that area. And then we have these hydrant widgets. So you can build all of your own customized sections. You could add that camera section to just take 4 or 5 pictures. But if we move to hydrant specific widgets, you can see that we have the toggles for hydrant out of service. So that's a key one that I would want to put on every one of my hydrant checklists. So if you're out in the field doing that inspection and something's wrong, boom, you can take it out of service, and as soon as you sync, everybody else that has access to Streamline, when it gets synced, in their administrative portal, it then turns red like that. The other thing that we have the ability to do is questions that are tied to emails, just like in properties. So if a hydrant is or needs to be painted, possibly, we could have a question as, does the hydrant need to be painted, and tie that to an email so that if the hydrant needs to be painted, whoever is in charge of that then gets an email that says, hey, this hydrant needs some work. Water main types, hydrant class, again, those toggles real briefly for private, yard, and then dry hydrants as well. So just like the property section, you have full control over what those checklists and templates are going to look like, so you can really make this work for your department per your protocols. The hydrant template that we've got right now, I think, is actually a fairly quick and easy one. It works for most people. But if you've got something that you would like to see changed or edited, or you just don't like the way that it's worded, maybe you don't like the words take it out, hydrant out of service, maybe you just want to make it super simple. Just make it out of service and save it. So just like properties, the hydrant checklists, again, are fully customizable. Plus we have some of these specific widgets, again, dedicated to the hydrant section specifically. So just know, again, you won't find these kinds of widgets in the walk-in nor the community risk, but only specifically in the hydrant section. And then same thing for the checklist. So we've kind of broken those out to keep it a little bit easier to manage on your end as you build out more and more checklists and more templates as you use the system longer.
Great, Eric. I appreciate it. There was a couple of questions that we addressed, and we'll follow up with some folks offline. We definitely appreciate everybody taking the time to go through this. If you're interested in using this module, please reach out to us. We can get you the template to upload your data, or you can begin using this today by entering your data manually as well. So again, we appreciate everybody's time jumping on this training today. Hopefully it was beneficial. It looks like there's a lot of people that are interested in using this module. So glad it was time well spent for everyone. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.